What do you? I mean, start with what do you anticipate? You know, at number 21, what kind of player will you get? What will be available? How do you kind of see things happening in front of you?
Well, I think that first of all, we're going to look for some people with hockey sense and some skill level, and I think they're there. I think there's 4 or 5 or 6 guys in our area that'll be still available. You know, we didn't ever know with the draft, but I think we've pretty much narrowed it down to the top 16, 18 people, and usually that becomes part of our pick process there.
How has it been? Will it be more difficult being here, Don, to predict what's going to happen in front of you?
Well, I think one of the things is there's a lot of more conversation going on when it's a centralized draft, and you get to see your last. As you know, people are moving players in and out of their meeting rooms to have further discussions, and we're doing those on Zoom now that we weren't able to do, you know, or that we didn't have to do before. So that's part of the process, and we're in the process of doing that now. The centralized draft is an event, and there's a lot more information coming and going, but the information sometimes is false too. So we're shielded by that by being in our own little rooms here.
How reminiscent is this year's format to what you may have experienced during 2020 when we were all inside for COVID?
I don't think it's the only sameness of it all is that you know we're separated from the other teams on the floor. Fortunately, with this draft, we've been able to see the players live all year, and many times over. We weren't able to do that in COVID, so we were doing everything. Excuse me, we were doing everything off Zoom, or you know what you remembered from the year before as underage players. Lot of difference. I don't think it's the same at all.
When you look at your top 21, how does it compare to past years in terms of the excitability factor?
I think by this time of year, everybody's going to get a player, and everybody's winning a Stanley Cup on that day. So I mean, it's, you know, we're going to get a player. The team before us is going to get a player. The team that picks a 4th rounder is going to get a player, you know, that they like. You know, hope springs eternal. That's why we play the game.
Last year, all of your picks were, I think, 6'2" or above. How much of an emphasis is size for you guys when drafting?
I don't think we went into the draft like that. A lot of people accuse us of that, but that's not. And I don't mean accusation. That's not necessarily true. We have to get players that we believe can play, and the way the draft fell for us last year, you know, we felt we did do that. You know, we've got a group in the 4th round even from last year that all have some size, all have some compete, all have some skill, all have some speed. You know, they checked a lot of boxes. You know, the thing that we did not do is look immediately and say, you know, well, he's big, so let's pick him, or he's big, so let's do more work on him. That wasn't the case at all. We went by our list.
John, conversations with players, how much are you gauging their desire to make sure they want to stay in a Canadian market, and getting a gauge out of even the pressures of playing in a Canadian market?
I don't think like this year. You know, I don't remember the time where we've had anybody say, "Well, I don't want to come to Ottawa," or "I don't want to come." You know, I don't want anybody or not to come to, you know, Vancouver. I mean, after the selection process is made, there's been instances where maybe that's happened that I'm not familiar with. But I think, you know, kids growing up in Canada, kids that are hockey players, they're playing hockey to play and play in the National Hockey League, and so I don't know that that's any concern. I think a lot of the players, they're playing because they like the pressure, they like the compete level, so it's not we don't have that concern.
We heard during the combine you tried to get to the prospects to tell you some jokes. What were some of the best ones you heard?
Well, I think we spoke with 79 people and we heard 3. So, well, No, I didn't. No. But the other the 76 that didn't tell a joke, they all failed the combine.
Why that strategy?
You put them out of their comfort zone, think on their feet, see how they react to different things. I mean, other teams do different things to see get the same results. You put some levity into it. Get them to see a personality. You can ask all the standard questions and you get the standard answers. But the other way is to see their personalities. We see them on the ice. We know what they do.
Did the three that gave you jokes, did they have personalities that you feel like are conducive to
Well,
teamwork?
I'll give you an example. There was two Russian players that they've rehearsed this because one came after the other, not immediately, like the next day, and they both told jokes, and the joke was, "I won't play in the NHL." We said, "Well, that's not a joke," and they said, "Yes, it is a joke. The joke is we won't play in the NHL." So, I had to. That went over my head the first time, but I'm short, so.
The junior landscape changing in the last couple of months and continuing changing with the NCAA rules, does it change something for you in the scouting on the development that's going to go after you draft those guys?
I don't know that it changed. I mean, obviously the venue is different for them now. There used to be a time when, later on in the selection process, you might draft a player because he's going to college because he's got 3 years left, or he's got a runway of 4 years, or whatever it is. So we've got time on him, and there was some people believed in that philosophy. But at some point in time, and I don't know what the rules are going to be. There's always questions about what's going to happen here going forward with the rules. We don't even, we don't have the answers all the time because we don't even know the questions. Because every time you talk to somebody, you get a new question. Somebody else comes up with another question. We don't have the answers to all of those going forward. But if they're all in the same level playing field, in the same, we pick guys that can play, sooner than later, and hopefully at some point in time there's some kind of mutual agreement where maybe we get 3-4 years of everybody. I don't know what the rules are going to be. I have no idea. It's a CBA negotiated thing, and I don't know the questions, so I don't know the answers.
How good is this draft relative to others?
Again, I go back to thinking that we're all going to get players that can play. That we believe can play, and there's places in the draft that might be a little softer than has been in the past. I think at the top end you've got real good players. I think you've got a good group of goaltenders, and there's Stanley Cup teams that win the Stanley Cup. They've got depth, and they've got the best third and fourth line, in the league, or fourth lines in the league on that certain time, in that certain time frame of 6 weeks or 4 weeks, and we all hope we can find those players.
How do you feel about the crop of goaltenders available in the draft this year?
I think it's a strong group of goaltenders. I once again, going back in the past and thinking about it, like the goaltending, the game in the crease has changed so much over the years, and there's certain people that certain stature that we feel can perform better in the National Hockey League than others, and I think it's a good group of people. Yeah, I think that the European market has caught up to the North American market over the years. You all know that. That's you look at the league and who's playing in the league, and so the number of goaltenders in the market, to select goaltenders out of has increased significantly over the years.
Do you see that as selecting goaltenders a necessity?
Well, up until last year, we did our best to pick one or two goaltenders in every draft. We just felt last year that we had other things we needed to fill, other positions. other needs in our organization, and we're going to try to continue to stock what we need, or not what we need necessarily, but talent level. We've always done that before. We've always picked a goaltender, 2 goaltenders, but we also want to pick people we think can play. We're not just going to throw a dart at the board at the goaltenders list and then we're going to pick that goalie. That's not going to happen.
What's that balance between?
Go ahead.
Between positional fit versus like best player available as a scout.
Well, I mean, as you're going along, you know what you're drafting. You're drafting and you're putting your positional list down together at the table. But the thing is that I think a general philosophy of mine would always be that you draft the talent and trade the position.
Given that you mentioned in Buffalo when we spoke about how the list is ever evolving and changes right up into the draft, just what do these next couple of days look like for you and your guys?
Well, I'll put it this way: I'm out of the room right now, and when I go back to the room, we've probably got 42 changes. So it changes. It'll change right up till the draft, because there'll be a player that goes 3 picks before you that you wanted to write the name down on. So then your draft list doesn't necessarily change, but then you go to Plan B, or after the Friday night, we'll have another meeting, and based on what has happened, throughout the first round, our list will be. It doesn't have to be, but it may be adjusted again. For goaltenders, and somebody asked the question about goaltenders as well, is when the first goaltender goes, the second goaltender goes, all of a sudden maybe there's a run on goaltenders. You've seen that in the draft. You've all seen that, and that's what happens. So if you want to get in on the goaltenders at that point in time, and you have one like you like, that's some people are making selections based on that at that point in time.
You joked about changes happening quickly. It's the biggest time of the year for the scouts, obviously,
Yeah.
why you have them. Are there still these heated debates that go on as scouts, they're fighting for their player to get drafted? I've heard of them in the past, especially after the first round, of this is the guy you need to take. Does that still happen?
Yeah, sure, it still happens. Yeah, everybody's got an opinion. That's what they get paid for. Only a couple get paid to make decisions. And it's good. That's what we encourage. We want them to have some passion for their players they like. The regional guys have to. The regional guys are so important to us because they find those people at the end of the draft that might play. That we've seen only by collateral viewing, as crossover guys, or we've been dragged out to a game to see those players play. So it's so important for them to help us make our draft successful. Everybody can see the first game who can play and who's going to jump right out at you, who's going to pop. Usually it's skating and compete that pops right away. But it's those guys that find the gems.
Back to the goalies for a second. Given their high value, why do they never go in the top 10 almost?
Well, I think historically, if you look at the goaltenders, some of the goaltenders that are taken so late in the draft are guys that end up being the stars on teams. And in some cases, that was because a long time ago, prehistoric times, in my first times, the draft was taken with the goaltenders. They only play half the games. There's injury. Nobody knows for sure if they can play, and if they can play 60 games in the National Hockey League. If they, you have to wait on them a little longer. Sometimes it's 250 to 400 games before they're of pro hockey before they're playing and starting in the National Hockey League. You try to draft starters, what you believe are starters. And if they fall a little bit below and they become organizational guys, they're still good players for us. Everybody needs five or six people in the organization that can play. We don't just talk about 2. There's injuries, there's all kinds of things that happen in the National Hockey League.
Sorry, how much do you have to be prepared for the scenario that Steve was in here saying maybe consider moving back if he can get another asset to go with that? How much do you you have to be prepared for that scenario.
Well, yeah, we have to be prepared. That's why the list has to be accurate, in our opinion. We have to have. We can't just put a list together of 21 people. We have to. How far? Along the way from 1 to 21, where are the drop-offs? From 21 to 31, how far will you willing to go back before you say no further? Or we want, this is the guy we have to have. And then it becomes what's coming back to us too. How close to, like just numbers. We're 21 and you move back, but you stay in the first round. So you go back to the 29, 30, 31, or 32 position. And I'm not saying that's happened, but you go back to that position. Well, like to go back to there, based on our list, what do we have to come back to us to make it worthwhile?
How would you evaluate Carter Yakimchuk's development last year?
Well, I think Carter did some things that we asked him to do. I know that his numbers weren't as good last year, but he paid a lot more attention to detail in his game. Contrary to some people's beliefs, he played a better defensive game. I don't have a problem with Carter's game. I mean, he had such a good year the year before. He's got so many avenues and so many ways that he can play. He's big. He can handle the puck. He's got deception. He can shoot the puck. He thinks the game offensively. So, there's not too many people that don't have to learn anything before they get here. He's fine.
Sorry. How close is he to playing in the national?
Well, I don't know. You see him in. You saw him in exhibition games last year. He was pretty good. Once again, it's do we need him now? That's a question. Or is he better off served, playing some time in the American League, or is he ready to go now? There's so many questions that Steve and the management have to answer, that coaches that I can't answer. We like him. We like him where he is. We like him. We like his development. But again, he'll have to. You don't give him anything at this level. He's got to earn it. And I think he put in the time last summer. He came here and put in the time. He did some. He showed that the investment that he put in his own time was worthwhile in the fall. He will make Steve and Travis make the decision. Like, that's his job. His job is to make them make the decision, to force their hands. That's what it's about.
We have a couple more before we leave and go back to the meetings.
From what you were able to see from him this past year, how do you think he was able to handle some of the downs, whether it was being snubbed from the Team Canada roster or some of the injuries he had throughout the season?
Well, our development people and myself and Steve, I know for sure, were in to see him and talked to him immediately after that. Had long conversations with his agent. He didn't seem to get too ruffled about it at all. Like, I'm sure he used it as a motivational tool, but I think that I was with him real shortly after those decisions were made, and with him right after a game. Not I didn't spend 2 days with him, but I was with him right after the game, and he was fine. It was his usual composed self. He was he wasn't gonna. Inside he might be burning, but he's not showing you that.
Last one. Blake Montgomery took great strides.
Yes.
Did he play beyond expectations this season for you?
Well, I think what he did was, some of our scouts would say no, because they expected him to be able to do some of the things that he can do and did do. He obviously changed his route, his path, and went from the USHL to the OHL. He had some great success this year. He played up and down the lineup, depending on who was in and out of the lineup, and depending who was playing at the World Junior on that team. and he was very successful in every role he had. And I would surprised. If we were surprised, we were happily surprised. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Thank you.
I know you're usually pretty mum on this topic, but what's the priority level right now of re-signing Claude Giroux?
Well, we continue to talk. I mean, I think I've stated how we want Claude back, and again, without getting into I just think it's not respecting the integrity of the process and negotiating. If I make any more comments other than that, but we continue to talk, and that's really all I have. Nothing really to report on it.
This time last year, there were some big priorities for the club.
Mm-hmm.
Goaltending, also getting some veteran leadership. Given the success of this season, and I'm talking about making the playoffs, are there any major items that you're, really keying in on at this point?
Well, you're right. Last year was, there were some high priorities to get to, and this was the week we made the trade for Linus, and then had the priority of balancing out our defense. We're able to do that, and then with the veteran players coming in, David Perron and Michael Amadio. So it was certainly it's a different year this go around. All those players I just mentioned are returning, and as our group continues to take a step, we're always looking to try and improve in certain areas. But was it more pressing last year? Was there more of a clear direction? Probably. But we're going to look at this as an opportunity, and as we prepare for the draft, we look at what might be available via free agency that could add to this group. But it's also, I'll go on to say that July 1 is an exciting time. It's an exciting time for me and our team to try and look at areas to improve. But also, it's only one opportunity, and I think as you see, there are things that. It's significant things that happen later on in the off season as well. So I don't feel like we need to force anything at this point in time. I like our group, but we're working hard to see where we can upgrade.
Steve, would you like to see if you could upgrade in one area? Would it maybe be in finding some support for 5-on-5 scoring?
Yeah, I think a lot of teams are doing the same thing, Bruce. I think with the addition of, again, when you're looking at improving the roster, different things, we were able at the trade deadline to add Dylan Cousins and Fabian Zetterlund. And the reason I bring it up is because we feel like Zetterlund can grow into that type of player that creates 5-on-5. He's a good shooter, something that I thought we lacked a little bit up front. He can, gets to those tough areas of the rink. So we feel like that at that point in time at the deadline, Fabian was one of those players that can continue to develop into helping us on 5-on-5.
What went into the rationale to give him 3 years, not go longer?
It's a good question. I think you start, when you get into these negotiations, you look at comparables, and you want a fair deal for both sides. And I think at the end of it, we felt comfortable, and they felt comfortable with the 3-year deal. I can't give you one specific reason. I think as you hit every negotiation is a little bit different, Alex, and you get to a comfort level for both sides and some comparables in the same area code, and we look forward to Fabian continuing to develop with this group. But last year was it's a challenge when these players come in at the deadline, especially where we were as a team coming into some really high intense competitive games, meaningful games, and him coming from a different team and a different structure. So I felt like his game continued to grow as the games went on and into the playoffs, and I think a full summer and a full training camp will do him good.
If you guys are able to re-sign Claude Giroux, just thinking back to when you mentioned how much you want to see more internal growth from your group, if you're able to bring Claude back into this fold, where do you see him in this line?
Well, I'll give you Travis's line. They'll dictate where they play. We want good players on our team. Claude's a good player. We got internal competition, which is a good thing, and it's a healthy competition where our players respect one another and play for one another. But there's a lot of players that can play in different roles in different areas. I was asked earlier about as many right shot forwards as we had, but a lot of them, they can all play. Perron and Giroux and Zetterlund have all played on the left side. So dictating where a player is going to play in our lineup, I think you sort of have a vision as a manager. But I think what we've created at this point in time is enough competition where the players who are playing the best at that time, and we know there's ups and downs of the season, but if they're playing well at that time, Travis will play them.
Do you have more of a timeline on Nick Jensen at this point?
Not specifically yet. I guess to no one's surprise that he seems to be beating the timeline. I mean, you've heard me speak about what type of pro he is as a player and how he looks after his body and the discipline and dedication and commitment. So I guess we're not surprised. I think, we're cautiously optimistic. He was dealing with a significant. He's such a good player for us in the first half and still a good player in the second half. And I don't think we recognized the severity of what he was dealing with. So full credit to him. And I guess I wouldn't be surprised if he's ready sooner, but as far as a specific date, I'd be cautious on doing that right now.
Would his perhaps the way it looks right now, would perhaps his recovery and your signing of Lassie Thompson maybe allow the answer to come from within or internally for now instead of maybe going out and finding another right shot? Or
Well, I'll continue to look, but it's exactly that. I think with a couple of things on Lassie and him coming back. First of all, I think that he's a high-quality player and a high-quality person, and development takes its own course. And it seemed like he was on a good path, and it sort of dropped off. Makes the decision to go back to Sweden. Has a terrific year in the SHL. Seems to have regained his confidence. So when I had spoken to him about the possibility of coming back, he was eager to speak about what the opportunity is. It's almost like a second chance, and I think if you look at a lot of careers, that we're hoping that this is the case. Now, that coupled with, Nick's off-season surgery, and also last year, as our defense evolved and the trade deadline happened and moving out Jacob Bernard-Docker, adding that depth back on the right side, those were all the compelling reasons why we felt it was a good opportunity for us, but mostly for Lassie. I think he's gained his confidence. I don't think we can say exactly how that year is going to translate back here to Ottawa, but we're excited to see him.
So Lassie Thompson is someone you'd feel comfortable as your number 7 entering the year if it came to that?
Again, I think that the player will dictate that. It's a hard one to answer because if he comes in great shape and can play to his talent level, I think there's certainly a chance, and Carter Yakimchuk's turning pro as well. So again, internal competition from within. Max Gannett's a good prospect. So depth is so vital to the to any organization, and we've tried to address that.
You might give the same answer in terms of dictate how we can play, but in terms of having a backup goaltender, how's your comfort level with Marilainen?
Oh, we're comfortable with Levy. I think, and Mads as well. Mads injuries happen, and there's ups and downs to a player's career. So, but no, we're comfortable with our goaltending depth, and we'll continue to look at other options as well.
How comfortable are you, I guess, just as a whole, outside of Giroux, you basically are likely to bring back most of your team.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like the team's, you're okay with that heading into next year, basically bringing back the same group, or do you feel like you want to be aggressive to kind of add to take this team to the next level?
If I get aggressive to try and add, where do I add, and who is it? Is the question, and if I can and it makes sense, I would. Everybody gets eager at this time of the year to make a big splash or get a big player in, but my approach has always been that it has to be the right fit at the right time. And if July 1st in free agency or the first part of free agency, if there's not a fit, we'll continue to work at it. And there are other opportunities further down into the summer, and also into the year. So I don't want to force anything with this group, and I think that they continue to move in the right direction, and I keep that in mind.
Has Anton Forsberg informed you that he is going to market?
I wouldn't speak on that. I mean, we've kept in touch with Anton. We've talked to all of our free agents, and I guess time will tell.
Would you like to bring Anton back?
I've always said I enjoy Anton. I think he's a great pro and a real good person.
Do you think this year will be different at the trade to try and make, or at the draft to try and make trades? You're not on the draft floor. You got to pick up the foot. Like, do you know how this is going to play out?
I think it'll be more challenging. Yes, I think that camaraderie and there's always dialogue going on in the trade market, but certainly easier to walk 20 feet over to the table and have that or over breakfast that morning or a coffee. But yeah, it's certainly different. I'm not sure which way what I think about it just yet. It's all new. It's nice to be here in Ottawa. We're going to be able to interact with our fans here. I think there's that part of it is exciting and hosting it here, but there are certain elements that we're going to miss.
Just that pick. I know it's 2 days and anything can happen. Are you still thinking that you're making that pick?
As of right now, I mean, I get back in the room with our guys. It's I think as we looked at it, we felt more comfortable with the 21st pick, that there was going to be a player that we like at that pick. Hard to handicap. I mean, we kind of feel like we have a grouping there. I don't see any scenario where we'll trade up, but we'll have some discussions on some trade back possibilities.
If you could maybe get another asset or two,
Yes.
think about moving back.
Possibly, yes. Yeah, that would be something I would consider, but not going the other way.
What was the thought process behind keeping this year's pick instead of giving up this year and keeping next year?
Long discussion around that. I think at the end of the day, we know where the ruling lies right now. I think Michael speaking about it, hoping for some leniency at some point in time, but we were comfortable that if we do have to give up the pick, that's where we're at. But we want to continue to add prospects to this group. I think with the draft turning out the way that it is at the 21st pick, I think that there's going to be a good player there, and also some depth in that group where we'd consider a trade back possibility.
Not to go back to your pending free agents, but do you have an update on Adam Gaudette, where things might be at with it?
No updates.
On that topic, qualifying offers are due today. Is there anybody that you can say may not be receiving an offer at this point? Or?
No. No, they're due Saturday. Saturday, yeah. Yeah.
And Steve, in the past couple of years, you guys have been right up against the salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
This year, you've got a bit of wiggle room, and I know who you re-sign can impact that. But how are you feeling right now, just about having that $10 million of space?
Better. I mean, I mean, when I first got here, we were up against it, and with a shorter roster, and that's an uncomfortable place to be. And we managed over time to loosen some things up, and through the offseason last year, got ourselves in a position at the trade deadline with a little bit of room, which made it challenging to add to the group. We felt we accomplished what we needed to do at the deadline, but ultimately, the more space that you have, you have your roster, you feel good about your roster, and if you can leave that flexibility to the point of trying to look at adding to this group at different times, we don't have to go and spend it all right now in free agency and try and force something into our group that may not be a perfect fit. And so the flexibility is hugely important, and puts you in a situation as a manager to try and add, but also having conversations with other teams that maybe don't have that luxury, and just much more comfortable dealing with some cap space.
How mindful are you in the organization of just the rising cap the next couple of years, where it's going to kind of, like, how much does that come in your process, especially during free agency, where $4 million this year might not feel the same in 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, it's a consideration. Again, we're looking for quality players. We're looking for quality players and the right fit.
Steve, did the playoffs provide any new information for you as an evaluator, like just to the good or the bad? as to, when you think about this player one way, now you've seen him for the first time in the playoffs, and moving forward as you make your plans for this summer, was there any changing of minds for you?
No, but it was the ultimate evaluator. I would agree with that, and it didn't change my mind. We have a high character group. They played for one another, and I was proud that I felt like we got better as the series went on, and maybe somewhat predictable first time for a lot of our players in that situation. Thought they handled it extremely well. Some young mistakes probably early in the series, and then we started continued to develop into what looked like a pretty solid playoff team, and the resilience. And I think to your question about the individuals, I think that all of them showed that as individuals they could handle it.
Not to go back to the draft, but how do you feel about the format this year where you'll be set up in your war room remotely and not in Los Angeles? And as I understand, I think a lot of teams are doing this too, they're likely going to meet their prospects virtually compared to being on site in person.
Yeah.
and shaking their hands. Like, how do you feel about that change?
I feel like I'm back in junior. I feel like back in the Ontario Hockey League. That's how we ran the draft. So he ran it through. We obviously different in the NHL, but it's unique. I mean, being at the draft is a special time for the scouts as well. So I think I'm guessing that the format is still under evaluation and how it turns out. There's good and bad to both. I think it's nice, again, being able to. We're going to have our fans here on Friday, and it'd be nice to be able to interact with them. We'll get a chance to maybe not give them some insight in it, but certainly some context to what we're doing. It's nice being here in Ottawa at this time of year, any time of year, but this time of year, and not having to deal with the travel post-draft. So there are a lot of things that you missed out. Brett pointed out, like just some of the discussions you'd have with other managers or other teams, and get a sense it's a little more challenging.
Anything reminiscent of how things were being run in 2020 when we were all stuck inside for COVID?
Yeah, I wasn't here for 2020, so, but yeah, I'd say it'd probably be very similar. Yeah, and they had the reel going off with the 2020 draft and the players with their families. They have it on in our building right now, so it'll be more like that.
Can you share the best joke that you received in those interviews from the prospects?
No, I don't think. Actually, I was in and out of the interviews. I'm not sure. That was Don Boyd's idea on asking them about a joke. I think we only had one player actually come up with it. I wasn't in on all of them, but yeah. Donnie's coming through the door next. You can ask him.
Steve, you real or imagine people, I think, out there have this idea after last year's draft that Senators have a fondness for the big player, the taller, the bigger guy. And now at 21, there's probably going to be some really medium-sized players with lots of skill. Where's your headspace with that stuff? Is that hard and fast rule on that front?
No, I think the size is a factor, as we see in our league. But there's certainly some players that aren't all that big that are hugely effective as well. It's something we look at. It's a little bit further down the list. We want to make sure that we have character and hockey sense and skill for these players. I guess if it's a tie between a smaller or bigger player and a lot of the other qualities check off, I probably look at the bigger player. But yeah, we've drafted some big players. Carter Yakimchuk's a big player. You can go down the list. We have some big players coming in, and but it's not the determining factor.
How much do you personally scout these players, specifically in the first round? Like, are you kind of into the scouting staff a lot? Like, what's that process like?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think this year was a little different. Last year, with our team not being in the situation of preparing for playoffs, I had more time on the road with our amateur scouts. This year is more through video. I want to make sure that I'm ultimately, the scouts put the list together and hold themselves accountable to the draft, but I like to know the players that we're looking at and be able to ask the right questions in the meetings, make sure that we can keep moving these things along in the evaluation process. But I love getting out to watch, but less so this year, live anyway.
Thank you, Steve.
Good? All right. Thanks, guys.